I and my wife Malai have been married for 5 years after meeting while I was teaching English in Thailand. She was completing her PhD in immunology at the time. We hit it off immediately and have built what I thought was a solid life together in the States. For context, Malai now works as a senior researcher at a prestigious medical institute and earns significantly more than I do, which has never bothered me. I'm actually proud of her accomplishments. I work as a cross-cultural consultant for international businesses, which I enjoy and it pays the bills, but I'm not the breadwinner in our household. The problem is my parents. They've made subtle and overt comments implying that Malai only married me for citizenship. This is ridiculous. She had already secured her own work visa through her academic achievements before we even met. Another important detail is that Malai has lupus, an autoimmune condition that flares up under stress. She's managed it with medication and lifestyle adjustments, but lately it's been getting worse. I'm seeing a correlation between her flare-ups and increased interaction with my family. Last night was my dad's retirement dinner. We hadn't seen many extended family members in a while, and I was hoping everyone would see how well Malai fits into our life. Things seemed to be going okay at first. My mom was polite but distant, and everyone made the usual small talk. Then came the toast. My dad stood up and started thanking everyone. Then he added, "And I want to especially thank my daughter-in-law Malai for coming. She found a nice American boy who could help her stay in the country, didn't she?" No one said anything. Malai maintained her smile, but I could tell she was hurt. My mom tried changing the subject to my dad's retirement plans, but he continued, "You know, these international marriages always make me wonder about the real motivations. Not that I'm referring to our situation, of course." I said, "Dad, that's enough. Please stop." He replied, "We're family. We can joke about these things. Malai knows I'm just teasing, right?" Malai, who normally stays quiet, she hates confrontation, spoke up. "Those jokes are hurtful." He said people were too sensitive these days. That was the breaking point for me. I stood up and said, "We're not going to sit through another dinner where my wife is disrespected. Dad, you need to apologize." He got defensive. "I'm just saying what everyone thinks. You're making a scene over nothing." After a tense moment, we left. My mom followed, insisting we were overreacting to a harmless joke and begging us to come back. In the car, Malai was quiet. At home, she admitted she feels guilty for coming between me and my family. I tried to reassure her she's done nothing wrong. She always feels it's her fault when my family shows prejudice. A quick note. Many commenters on my previous posts pointed out my parents' behavior is a form of racial microaggression, and that exposing Malai to it continuously enables them. I've been thinking about this, especially as her lupus symptoms worsen. I've received messages from family members. Some are embarrassed by my dad's behavior, but most say I overreacted and should have addressed it privately instead of ruining a special family occasion. My sister says I should apologize for causing a scene, even though she admits Dad was out of line. My uncle sent a long paragraph about respecting elders. This isn't the first time. My parents have questioned Malai about how things work in her country, wondered if she sends money back to her family, even though her parents are professors and financially stable, and acted surprised when she shows knowledge about American culture and politics, despite living here for over 10 years. I've called them out privately before, explaining why their comments are hurtful. They apologize and then do the same thing next time. It's exhausting, and I don't want Malai exposed to this anymore. After years of polite conversations and no improvement, I felt I had to take a direct stand. Now I'm dealing with the fallout of ruining my dad's retirement dinner, and half my family thinks I'm unreasonable. Malai woke up this morning with joint pain and fatigue, signs of a lupus flare. Seeing her suffer because of this drama makes me more certain I did the right thing, but I'm still doubting myself because of all the messages I'm getting. I hate confrontation almost as much as Malai does, Taba. I feel like I'm going crazy. Is it normal for families to make these kinds of jokes about international marriages, or am I right to draw a hard line against this behavior when it's affecting my wife's health? Now for the first update. First of all, thank you all for the overwhelming support on my previous post. Many of you shared similar experiences with in-laws and cross-cultural marriages that made me feel less alone in this struggle. It's been 3 weeks since my dad's retirement dinner incident, and things have only become more complicated. My parents have been calling almost daily, with calls that mix guilt, demands for an apology, and attempts at reconciliation that avoid the actual issue. The calls start with small talk before turning to how I embarrassed them in front of everyone and ruined a special occasion. When I explain why their comments about Malai were hurtful, they either say they were just joking or accuse me of being too sensitive. They also think Malai is too sensitive. My sister has taken on the role of family mediator, calling every other day to report how upset our parents are. She says that while Dad was wrong, I should be the bigger person because that's just how Dad is, and he's not going to change at his age. During our last conversation, she said, "Can't Malai just ignore it? Everyone knows Dad doesn't mean anything by it." The stress from the dinner triggered one of her worst lupus flares in years. She had to take a week off work. She once worked through a 102-degree fever for time-sensitive experiments. Her rheumatologist started her on a new medication with side effects: increased fatigue, nausea, and headaches. I've been using this situation as anonymous case material in my cross-cultural consulting work. Last week, I worked with a tech company on cultural differences in their international teams, and the parallels were clear. My clients keep praising my insightful examples about family dynamics across cultures. Yesterday, my parents showed up at our house unannounced. I was heading home from a client meeting when I got a text from Malai. "Your parents are here. Your dad says they need to talk to you. What should I do?" When I got home, Malai had let them in. My mom was examining our decor while holding one of the wooden elephants Malai's father gave us, saying, "You have so many foreign decorations, don't you?" My dad was sitting in my spot on the couch and immediately said they were tired of this standoff and wanted to clear the air before my cousin's wedding next month. He used phrases like, "Put this nonsense behind us," and "everyone's tired of the drama," without acknowledging what happened or why we were upset. I explained that we needed a genuine apology and changed behavior, not just an apology in words. My dad said, "What exactly am I supposed to be apologizing for?" Being concerned about my son. Then my mom said, "We've always wondered why you couldn't find a nice American girl." She added to Malai, "Not that there's anything wrong with you." Malai was in no condition to deal with this. I pointed out that their behavior was affecting Malai's health. My dad said, "Oh, so now we're making her sick? Convenient excuse." Malai put her hand on my arm to calm me. Malai, who usually stays quiet during these confrontations, finally spoke up. She told them how their comments make her feel unwelcome, despite her efforts to connect over the years. She mentioned bringing traditional Thai dishes to family gatherings that went untouched, asking about family history that was brushed off, and being treated as an outsider after 5 years of marriage. My mom interrupted her with, "Well, it's hard to connect when we have such different cultures." She had not asked Molly about her culture beyond whether people in Thailand eat with forks or chopsticks. After they refused to acknowledge any wrongdoing, I asked them to leave until they were ready to have a respectful conversation. As they were walking out, my dad said, "You know, the family is starting to think she's the one who's turned you against us. You were never like this before her." After they left, Malai had an anxiety attack. I sat with her and reminded her to take slow breaths. That was a turning point for me. I've spent years making excuses for their behavior, but watching my wife suffer made me realize I was enabling them. A commenter pointed this out, and they were right. The past few days, I've been declining calls from my parents and sister. I texted them that until they acknowledge the harm they've caused and commit to treating Malai with respect, we need distance. My sister responded with a message about family loyalty and how Mom is crying every day, but I'm not feeling guilty about it. Malai's health has to come first. Her doctor warned that continued stress could worsen her condition and cause long-term complications. I won't be responsible for that, just to maintain a relationship with people who refuse to respect my wife. Some family members have reached out with concern, while others have sided with my parents. It's clear who sees family as unconditional and who uses it to demand compliance with harmful behavior. I've been helping Malai rest and managing her medication schedule. When she's up to it, we've been discussing boundaries we should have set years ago. She admitted she had downplayed how much my parents' behavior hurt her because she didn't want to cause problems. Several people have asked about the upcoming wedding. We're still planning to attend. It's my cousin who has been supportive, and Malai wants to celebrate with the family members who have been kind. We'll keep interactions with my parents minimal, and leave if they make comments. Protecting Malai's health must take priority over maintaining a relationship with parents who refuse to respect my wife. Exposing her to their behavior is harm. One commenter said, "They're showing you exactly who they are. Believe them." I'll update after the wedding if anything changes. Thank you again for helping me see this clearly when I was doubting myself. The supportive messages have meant more than you know. Now for the second update. Update 2. It's been 2 months since I last posted about the situation with my parents and Malai, and I honestly didn't expect things to escalate further. For those who missed it, my original post and first update explain how my parents have been treating my Thai wife like she married me for a green card, despite her successful research career. Link to original posts for reference. These past 2 months have been quiet. I've had minimal contact with my parents, mostly short texts. Malai's health improved with reduced stress, though she's still dealing with medication side effects. Her doctor adjusted her dosage last week, which helped with fatigue, but she still gets random dizzy spells. She has returned to her lab full-time. Mini update before I continue. Malai got nominated for a prestigious research grant last month for her work on autoimmune disorders. Her team celebrated with a small party, and that was good news in the middle of all this drama. My cousin's wedding is this weekend. We RSVP'd months ago, before all this started, and I've been dreading it. I suggested we skip it, but Malai insisted we should go. "We shouldn't hide," she said. "That just makes it look like we did something wrong." She's right, but I'm still anxious about the whole thing. My sister called yesterday to say Dad has been telling the extended family that Malai is controlling and manipulative, and that I've changed since marrying her. Rich coming from the man who's trying to sabotage my marriage. The most frustrating part is how this is now affecting my professional life. Remember how I mentioned using this situation anonymously in my cross-cultural consulting work? Turns out the CEO of my biggest client was at Dad's retirement dinner. He made some comments about family loyalty during our last meeting that showed he had heard gossip. I'm not sure if Dad reached out to him directly or if it was just cocktail party talk, but it's making things awkward. I spent years building my reputation as a cross-cultural expert, and now I'm worried my own family drama is undermining my credibility. Saturday arrived, and we went to the wedding venue, a vineyard about an hour outside the city. The ceremony was scheduled for 3 p.m., so we arrived around 2:30 and found seats in the back. Several relatives were staring and whispering to each other. We were seated at a table with some second cousins I barely know. I decided to get us drinks from the bar. When I returned about 10 minutes later, I found my Aunt Cheryl had cornered Malai. I heard her say, "So what was your real reason for moving to America?" Malai looked uncomfortable. Aunt Cheryl continued, "Do you send money back to your poor family in Thailand?" For context, Malai's parents are university professors in Bangkok. I stepped in and gave Malai her drink. Aunt Cheryl smiled and said, "I'm just getting to know my niece-in-law better," but it felt more like an interrogation. I was about to respond when I spotted my parents approaching our table. My dad walked directly to us, my mom behind him with a nervous smile. He asked if everything is okay here. Then he said, "We're all so glad you allowed my son to come today." The emphasis on allowed made his point clear. I told him that was inappropriate and untrue. He raised his hands and said, "I'm just trying to make peace here, but you always take everything as an attack." People were starting to stare, including the bride's parents. This was creating drama at someone else's celebration. My cousin came over and asked if we could take the family drama outside, since it was her special day. We decided to step outside, and as we walked away, I heard my dad telling a group of relatives, "This proves everything I've been saying about Malai causing family conflict." Once we were outside, Malai cried. I'd never seen her like that before, not even during her worst lupus flares. She told me she'd been receiving messages from relatives questioning her intentions and suggesting she'd broken up a once happy family. Some asked if she married me for my money or for citizenship. She'd been hiding these messages from me for weeks, not wanting to make things worse. I realized this wasn't just Dad making thoughtless comments. It was a campaign to undermine our marriage by turning my family against Malai. He was working to isolate us and pressure us into his views. We left the wedding early. I texted my cousin a brief apology, saying we weren't feeling well. She replied with a curt, "I understand," but it didn't feel sincere. The drive home was mostly silent. Malay stared out the window while I gripped the wheel, moving between anger, hurt, and confusion. When we got home, she asked, "Do you ever wish you had married someone else? Someone who wouldn't cause all these problems with your family?" I still think about that question. After 5 years together, facing health challenges, building careers, and creating a life together, she felt like she was the problem. I spent that night holding her while she slept. The next morning, I made a decision. I've spent years trying to bridge cultural gaps and help people understand each other. That's my work. But I can't keep trying to fix a relationship where one side refuses to acknowledge the harm they're causing. My wife's health and happiness have to come first. I can't keep exposing her to people who see her as an intruder, especially when it's causing harm through her lupus flares. I've spent the last few days gathering documentation, screenshots of the messages relatives sent her, evidence of her accomplishments and status before we met, medical records showing the link between stress and her condition. I'm not sure what I'll do with it yet, but it feels important to have the truth documented when so many lies are being spread. I don't know what happens next. Part of me wants to confront my father one final time with all the evidence, but another part of me wonders if it's worth it. Will proof change a mind that's already decided what to believe? And if you're thinking, just cut them off completely, believe me, I'm getting there. At this point, I'm managing day to day, focusing on supporting Malai and protecting our relationship from outside interference. I'll update again once I figure out my next steps, assuming the mods don't lock this post for reasons out of my control. Now for the final update. The Thai wife, xenophobic parents, and lupus saga finally has a conclusion. First, I want to thank this community for the support and advice that helped me navigate this nightmare. It's been almost 3 weeks since the wedding disaster, and I've been processing a lot. After discovering just how far my dad had gone to undermine my marriage, I knew I needed to make some permanent decisions about our family relationships. The morning after we left the wedding, I started receiving texts from cousins and my sister asking if we were okay. I appreciated the concern, but it was too little too late. While Malai rested that Sunday, I spent hours reviewing all the messages she'd been hiding from me. My relatives questioned if my wife was using me for citizenship or money, asking if she was controlling me, and even speculating about whether her lupus was convenient timing or exaggerated. The worst part wasn't the messages, but realizing Malai had been silently enduring this abuse for months without telling me because she didn't want to make things worse between me and my family. She had been carrying this burden alone while battling a serious health flare-up. I realized how unaware I'd been. On Monday, things escalated beyond what I could have imagined. Malai got called into HR at her research institute. Someone had contacted them expressing concerns about her work authorization status and suggesting the institute should verify her credentials. HR assured her it was nothing to worry about. Her documentation was impeccable, and they recognized it as a baseless complaint, but they were required to follow up on all reports. That night, she had a severe lupus flare. We ended up in the ER, where her doctor warned that stress was causing potentially permanent kidney damage. He increased her medication, but said medication alone couldn't counteract chronic stress. Many commenters pointed out that documenting everything would be crucial if things escalated. Those screenshots and records became my most powerful tool. On Tuesday, I took a personal day from work and did some digging. I traced the message to HR back to my father's personal email. I was stunned. This wasn't just casual racism or misunderstanding anymore. He had actively tried to interfere with my wife's career. I also discovered he'd been sending group emails to extended family with misleading information about Thai marriage practices and statistics about green card fraud. He'd circulated an article about signs your family member is in a controlling relationship, with parts highlighted that he claimed matched my behavior since marrying Malai. The campaign was more extensive and deliberate than I had imagined. After consulting with Malai and her doctor, we decided this needed to end for her health and our marriage. I contacted my parents and requested a family meeting that weekend. My mom seemed relieved and said she'd make lunch. What I didn't expect was arriving at their house to find not just my parents, but also my sister, 2 aunts, an uncle, and 3 cousins. My dad had apparently anticipated a confrontation and wanted witnesses on his side. Malai squeezed my hand as we walked in, and I reminded myself to stay calm. I brought a folder with printouts of everything. Malai's original visa approval from before we met, her salary information showing she earns more than me, her academic publications and awards, copies of my dad's emails to family, and the record of his call to her workplace, and a letter from her doctor explaining the medical impact of stress on lupus patients. After brief hellos, I said I wanted to address all the concerns about my marriage. I presented evidence of Malai's independent career and immigration status. My dad tried to interrupt, but I kept going. When I revealed the printouts of his emails to family containing false information, my Aunt Cheryl gasped. "Is this actually true?" she asked. "Did you really say these things?" Instead of admitting fault, my dad said, "I was just looking out for my son. He's always been naive about people's intentions." Then I placed the medical documentation on the table and explained how his campaign against Malai had been harming her health, showing her latest test results that indicated potential kidney damage. She could have permanent organ damage from the stress of constantly being treated like an outsider in this family, I said. Her doctor has explicitly stated that removing sources of chronic stress is medically necessary at this point. For the first time, my mom looked concerned. "What have the doctors said about long-term effects?" she asked. Before I could answer, my dad cut in. "She's obviously using her condition to manipulate the situation." The room went silent. Even his allies seemed shocked by this response. I closed my folder and stood up. "We came here today to give you one last opportunity to acknowledge what you've done and commit to changing. Instead, you've confirmed exactly why we need to make this decision. We will not maintain relationships with anyone who disrespects my wife or questions our marriage. That includes family." As we prepared to leave, my cousin Jenna stood up. "I'm sorry I didn't say anything at my wedding," she said. "I've heard these comments for years and should have said something sooner." Her mother looked at the floor, then nodded. Several family members approached Malai directly to apologize for believing the misinformation. My sister hugged her and whispered something I couldn't hear that made Malai nod. My dad remained seated, arms crossed, while my mom hovered uncertainly between him and the rest of the family. "I hope someday you'll understand what you've thrown away," my dad said as we reached the door. It was the last thing he said to us. On the drive home, Malai spoke. "I feel lighter, somehow." I knew exactly what she meant. There was grief there, family relationships permanently altered, but also relief. We had finally broken free from a toxic cycle that had been damaging both our marriage and her health. That was almost 3 weeks ago. Malai's doctors report her markers are improving with the reduced stress. She's back at work full-time, and her team received preliminary approval for a grant she was nominated for. I've been working with a therapist to process my feelings about my family. We've maintained contact with my sister and the cousins who apologized, setting clear boundaries about what kind of communication is acceptable. My mom has texted a few times, avoiding mentions of my dad or what happened. I respond politely but briefly. My dad hasn't reached out at all. For now, we're focusing on her health and strengthening our relationship after this stress. We're planning a trip to Thailand next spring to visit her family, who have been supportive throughout this ordeal. Edit. A few people have asked about my professional situation. The CEO, who heard gossip from my dad, reached out to apologize after hearing what happened. His daughter is in a cross-cultural marriage, and he recognized the dynamics once he had the full picture. We've scheduled a company-wide training on cultural sensitivity for next month. This community gave me strength when I needed it most during the most difficult period of my adult life. I plan to support others navigating cross-cultural family conflicts.